And you had once, you were once a diver in Coos Bay.
Yeah.
And you had been called out of an emergency because they couldn't find any other diver at that time for an accident.
What happened was, a friend and I was going to go diving out of Cape Arago, and we had all our diving stuff in the car, and we were just getting ready to go, and I got a call from the president of our diving group. We were called the Coos Kelpers back then, and we had probably 15, 20 people in our group that were skin divers. And anyhow, I got this call from Bill Daly, and he said, Don, he says, come up to my house. There's a couple, they just drowned in the river out in back of us here. And he says, come up and help quick. Maybe we can save them. I don't know. They just drowned. And so I got in my old dad's Nash Rambler with this other guy, and I was probably going 70, 80 miles an hour, and I pulled up upon a police car and another. It was not the police, but
sheriff.
Huh?
The sheriff.
The sheriff, yeah. And I tried to pass him. I never forget that on that old road. And they was looking at me like, "Are you crazy? Where are you going?" And the old car wouldn't pass him because that old Nash Rambler just wouldn't go fast enough. I had it down to the floorboard. So anyhow, I finally got in back of him again. And then there was a split in the road, and they went to the left, and I went to the right because that's where my friend Bill Daly lived. He had a little ranch there right next to the river, this big old slow-moving river. And so I got out, and Bill told me what had happened. He says, over here, Don, someplace in this area is where they went down. And he had a tank full of oxygen. I didn't, air, not oxygen, but he had a tank there, a diving tank. And he says, here, this is full, put it on and see what you can do. Because at that time, Bill Daly, even though he was the president of our diving club, he'd got a back problem and he couldn't dive anymore. It messed him up. So I put his tank on, and I dove around for a while, and the water was so dark and so murky, you could hardly, I remember I went through areas down there where literally there was tree branches, and I'd find myself in trees and stuff, and it was deep. It was about 30 foot deep and very dark and dim. So finally I went up a few feet up further up the river, and I found this open area that was even a little deeper, and all of a sudden I saw this gal. And what happened was this lady had fallen into the river, and a friend of hers, the man, she fell in, and he jumped in to help her, and she panicked or something, even though she could swim and he could swim, and she pulled him down. Oh my God. And so I found her first, and I got a hold of her, and I didn't know who she was at this time. It was a body, and I brought her up to the surface, and by this time the men that were dragging the river in a couple of boats with hooks, grappling hooks, they saw me with the body, and they came over with the boat and got a hold of her and pulled her to shore. And then I dove down again, and when I dove down again, and I was 15 or 16 at the time this happened, and I went and dove down again, and probably about maybe 30 foot away, I found a man laying on the bottom, and I picked him up. And I remember bringing him to the surface. I had to really kick hard because he was a big man. And when I brought him up, they took him in, and we went to the bank where the boat took him to the bank, and I swam over to the bank, and up on the hill I saw a lady crying and weeping, and she had 2 little children in her arms, in each arm, and she was just crying and weeping, and I knew that was her husband that had drowned, and it just tore me up and broke my heart, and here she lost her husband, and then I found out after I brought this lady up that I actually knew her, And I worked in a grocery store there in Coos Bay. It's called George's Groceries. And she worked up above in the office is doing clerical work and things for him. And I was so shocked when I got her to the surface that I realized and I knew who she was. I didn't know her well, but I knew she worked there also, like I did in that grocery store. And so after that happened, I'm telling you, for a couple of weeks, I'd wake up in the middle of the night having bad dreams.
Wow.
And it just haunted me about their deaths because I was young. And it left such an impression, deep impression upon me about how these people died unneededly, you know, as an accident. Yeah.
Amen. Wow.